Every once in a while, in the comments on this channel or in one of my LinkedIn posts, a debate starts about gamification versus game-based learning. What's the difference? Which one's better? And I'll be honest with you, until today, I have fled that discussion like the plague because I always thought, who cares? If you can take something from the world of games and apply it to your training in a way that makes it more effective and helps the learner not be bored out of his mind, I don't care what you call that. I used to say, call it gamification, call it game-based learning, call it Brenda for all I care. But if I'm being honest, it does matter because thinking of it as this dichotomy is actually harmful. I've come to realize that it leads to terrible training and it makes you waste your time, effort, and sanity when all you want to do is make your training more engaging and effective. So I've resisted making this video for a long time, but this needs to be addressed, not to help you win the argument in the comments, but so that you can get super clear on how to leverage games to make training that you're proud of without wasting your time down useless rabbit holes. Now, who am I to talk about this? Well, my name is Mary Jo and I've spent 10 years as an instructional designer, 10 years as a video game producer, and for the past 11 years, I've helped hundreds of e-learning designers reach their goals by using effective gamification, not gimmicks. I have a program that teaches exactly that step by step, so if you're into that, check it out at the link below. Now, let's settle the issue of gamification versus game-based learning. First, what do people usually mean when they say gamification and game-based learning? The usual thing people will say is that gamification is the application of game elements to non-game contexts. What game elements? Well, they typically name surface elements like points, badges, avatars, levels, leaderboards, and progress bars. And in my experience, if that's all you're using, if you're only using the surface elements, your gamification won't be super effective. So this is what people usually mean when they say gamification, but it's what I call shitty gamification. Now, game-based learning has two definitions depending on who you ask. Some authors say that game-based learning is what happens when someone learns something accidentally while playing a game for fun. So let's say I'm playing Assassin's Creed 2 and at some point in this game, Leonardo da Vinci lets me use his flying machine. So maybe I didn't know that, but I've just learned that Leonardo didn't just paint pictures, he also invented things. The game wasn't built to teach me that, it was built for fun, but I learned that incidentally. Now that's not super useful because for one thing, all games teach. Even checkers can teach strategy and tic-tac-toe teaches that you don't want to play tic-tac-toe. But more importantly, if you're an instructional designer and you're trying to use games to make your training more effective, you're not going to build some unrelated game and hope that it incidentally teaches what your learners need on the job. At least I hope you're not doing that. The second definition of game-based learning is a lot more to the point. It's when you build a full game from the ground up with the primary purpose of teaching. It can be entertaining too, but its main goal is to teach. This is much more often what people mean when they say game-based learning. Now here's why this dichotomy is hurtful. If you try to build something using only these elements, you'll quickly find that your learners see right through it, they disengage, and you'll come to the conclusion that gamification doesn't work, which is a shame because what's really happening here is you're not using the right parts of games. On the other side, we have full-fledged games, and the problem there is that most instructional designers don't have the time, the budget, the art assets, the tech, or even the game design skills to build something like this. And honestly, even if you were to build the whole thing, there's a ton of expensive and time-consuming features in here like effects and graphics that don't actually contribute to helping the learner reach the learning objectives. So it's not the most efficient use of your resources. So the big issue here is that this is not accessible to most instructional designers. So if you see these two extremes as your only choices, then you're stuck between ineffective and inefficient, plus inaccessible. But this dichotomy leaves out a massive middle ground. There's a universe of stuff that you can use here, even if you're just a one-person team like me. The even better news is you can think of this as a spectrum from lightly gamified to deeply gamified, but more is not necessarily better, okay? There's good stuff and bad stuff here, but there's good stuff and bad stuff here too. Impact does not depend on quantity. The most effective and engaging gamified training happens when you choose the right mechanic for your learning objectives. And you can decide to lightly gamify that or deeply gamify it. It all depends on the resources and the time that you have as well as your constraints. So let's look at an example of the same course made at different levels of gamification. And I'm going to use a traditional e-learning course on cybersecurity. My basic course follows the usual model where we give information and then we test and then we repeat that. And let's say you want to gamify that so that it's more impactful. Let's start with level 1, surface gamification. So here you take the exact same course, but you slap on a point system. Learners get 10 points for each correct quiz answer. Maybe they see a progress bar, and once that's filled up, they get a badge that says Cybersecurity Hero. Now, these are just surface mechanics that don't change anything about how you present the information and how you assess the learner. That stays the same, but you've slapped on some extra rewards on top. This isn't gonna hurt, but it's not gonna help the learner retain any more information. So very little impact on learning outcomes here. Level 2, now we're getting into some effective gamification, but it's still very light. So let's say at some point my course teaches that you should look for spelling mistakes to determine whether an email is a scam. Instead of giving them that information, I'm gonna show them 3 scam subject lines and ask them to find out what they have in common. So now they're the ones figuring out the rule, which is spelling mistakes are often a sign that a message might be a scam. That's easy, but they can't click past this without thinking. You're now teaching the way a game teaches by making them do something relevant. That's a cognitive mechanic, and I can do that all the way through or just on the most important lessons. This is still pretty simple and inexpensive. There's no fancy graphics, but now we've changed how the content is presented, and now they have to pay attention. That makes a difference. Next level is medium gamification. So let's say here we decide to add some motivational mechanics, but the right ones. So let's say learners get hints that they can use on harder questions, but we'll have them earn those hints by completing some extra bonus challenges. Do a few of those and you'll get a hint. So if they're stuck on a hard level, they can choose to go do an extra challenge to get a hint, which they'll then use to unblock themselves. We haven't added much in terms of cost, but now we've added a way to give the player a little extra choice in how they go about things. Plus, because we have this hints mechanic, we don't have to worry so much about challenges being too hard. Those who need extra help will have a way to get it. Now, if we want heavier gamification without going into a full-fledged game, we can add a story or dynamic difficulty. So now we've decided the game will track how well you're doing on different challenge types, and it will automatically present you with more challenges on topics that you struggle with so that you get more practice on those. That means we're not wasting the learner's time practicing things they've already mastered, and the game focuses on each learner's individual learning gaps. That's making their training time more efficient. And finally, we have the full-fledged game, and here the sky's the limit. Let's say we have a full simulator where they play an office worker, they navigate a digital office environment, check emails, talk to coworkers, and respond to spam in real time. Maybe there's even a story where a security breach happens and we explore the consequences of that. This can be powerful, but it's also expensive and time-consuming to build. It's great if you have the resources, but it's not necessary if you don't. The point is, all of this is gamification. Some of it is effective, some not. Some of it is doable on your budget, some not. You can pick what's right for your content, your learners, and your constraints. You don't need all the bells and whistles. You just need the right mechanics applied intentionally. So here's what I want you to take away from all this. Yes, it's true that if you expect superficial points and badges to increase learning outcomes, you're gonna be disappointed. In most cases, this will leave learners cold. But you don't need to go to the other extreme and build a full-blown game to leverage game mechanics and have an impact. Your power comes from knowing how to design the best mechanics for your content so that you can change how the learner interacts with it, make them think, decide, explore, and take action. And if you want a coach to show you how to design the ideal game for your content step by step, you can book a call with me at the link below, and we'll see if my program is a good fit for you and your specific situation. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.